today I wanted to pick your brains on the top 3 things that you need to be considering doing if you want to buy your first investment property. So I hope you've been able to get some information around this just to help all of our listeners. So yeah, you ready to get into it?
Absolutely. Yep. Really looking forward to it. Thank you.
So number one thing, what would you say if people are out there thinking about this that they should be doing? What's the first thing you think they should be doing?
Well, number one, 100%, this will never shift, is to get a pre-approval in place. So I'll make the assumption with this conversation that the people that's buying, the person buying the investment property has bought property before, right? So clients might be under the impression they've done property before, they've got finance before, so they can just step in and purchase straight away, right? They've done it before, they know what's involved, and they can just go look for the property and put the offer in. There's quite a few fundamental principles involved in the whole investment lending space, but the number one is to get a pre-approval so you know what you can spend, and have that conversation with your finance professional, your mortgage broker, whoever it is that you're dealing with, to see what your long-term goals are in terms of building a portfolio. Like, is it your intention to build 2 or 3 or 4 over the next 10, 15 years, right? Because that might impact a whole bunch of things in terms of the purchase price now, which lender, how we structure you, what we do with a potential existing home loan, how we structure all that. There's all sorts of principles that come into play when we set people off on their first investment property, and we've done thousands of these. We're actually quite experts in it, but certainly number one, and that's like with buying any property. So to buy any property, get a pre-approval. Make sure it's in line with your long-term objectives of building a portfolio, and it means you can go and put an offer in on a property with plenty of confidence.
Talking about that, one of the things that I quite often find that we talk to clients about as well is that, and also when you buy a property you do this, you also want to think about whether you want to be changing the home around in the next sort of 3 to 5 years as well, whether it's renovating or upgrading or anything like that, because that can throw a real cat amongst the pigeons, can't it?
It certainly can, and we tend to we have that conversation with all the people about to buy. Anyone about to borrow more money is what is the plan on the home front, because mentally and psychologically that tends to take a lot of precedence. Having the new kitchen or the new things that are staring you in the face day to day will very quickly take precedence over a longer term investment objective. You know what I mean? So we try and factor that all in.
Yeah, okay. No, that's great. All right. So step number 2 or tip number 2, we've got the pre-approval in place. So what's the next thing that you would be suggesting that the person or couple should be looking at?
Well, we have found, and as I say, we've dealt with thousands of property investors, and quite often when we ask the question, because a lot of them come with a particular property in mind, we ask them, what has made you choose this one, right? And the top 3 answers I get to that, their friends liked it, it's somewhere near home, or they would spend an hour on the internet and found something they liked, right? We have tended to find that people spend more time researching a car, researching an oven, a dishwasher, all these things which are important household items, and you're going to be using them for thousands of hours, obviously, but might cost anywhere from $2,000, $5,000 for an appliance to 20 or 50 or 80,000 for a vehicle, obviously. But to spend 500, 800, 900,000, we have tended to find psychologically that people spend less time researching that than the things that we mentioned earlier. So we encourage people to engage professionals in the investment property space, right? That will take them through a step-by-step process of looking at macro factors. Where's Australia heading in terms of migration and population growth and infrastructure spending, all these things to sort of get down to a nitty-gritty of what might suit these clients' circumstances. Like, are they intending to retire with 3 or 4 properties, or are they looking at capital growth or yield, or what, and different couples or singles have different objectives and requirements when they're setting out on this investment property path. So engaging sort of an investment or a planner or a property investment expert, that's definitely a professional that people should put into the mix of who they're talking to.
I'm guessing you need to make sure that that person's got sort of an alignment with you in terms of your own philosophy as well too, and getting some clarity around that's important, because there are buyers agents. There are probably a couple of different categories of what you might call an investment property professional, aren't there? There's buyers agents that might just do homes and investment. There's people that might just do investment properties. And then I believe there's almost a new category of investment property professional out there these days that are licensed to give property advice. Is that right?
There is that, and that's tend to be where we'd recommend. And there's also, in terms of what the public might know about, is that you've got the property spruikers, the old seminar guys who will have some properties they want to sell you, and they'll sell that to you without even recommending that you go and get finance or talk to a solicitor or any of that. So you've got to be wary of that, because there's a lot of those out there. So certainly look for the property professionals that are qualified, have got an understanding of finance, that make sure that you go through the steps of understanding your finance situation, understanding what type of property to buy, and all those factors. So a qualified investment professional, so to speak, would definitely be the way to go.
Okay, so we've got the property professional out of the way. Any other professionals that you'd like to make any comment about that it's probably important for the client or the person to have in line?
Other types of professionals, you mean? Well, certainly, if because you're going to be investing in property, the way your tax return looks is going to be a bit different. So we want to make sure that the tax benefits of investing in property and the tax strategies that a person's accountant might have, all match. So as finance brokers, we make sure that we ensure that we're working with the accountant, that they understand what's going on. Quantity surveyors in terms of getting depreciation reports, especially for new purchases, new properties that people might be thinking of acquiring. The solicitors, solicitors, accountants, surveyors, financial planners. We get referrals from financial planners who are recommending property investment as part of a client's overall asset mix, and making sure that all those objectives being decided between the client and their existing professionals, it all matches up.
So we've got the professionals around us, we've got the pre-approval in place. So tip number 3, Dave, or what's another conversation point that you might bring up with clients?
Well, loan structure is another thing. We talked about the pre-approval, but the way we do lending for investors tends to be different, right? We think of most loans that we want to pay off as soon as possible, right? So the circumstance I'll talk to about you now, which is 80% of new people buying an investment property, they've still got a home loan, they're buying their first investment property. So they're using equity in their property to buy their first investment property. They're not necessarily saving a new deposit, right? So they might have a home loan and now they've got a new investment loan, right? So part of the structuring we try and look at from a cash flow perspective is, okay, the client has a home that they're going to be living in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. That's the loan we want to pay down. That's our principal and interest loan. But the investment lending, we tend to set as in interest-only repayment for as long as possible, right? So that's a bit counterintuitive. Most of us, when we're talking about finance, think that every loan we've got to pay down as quickly as possible. But as people go on their investment lending journey, that gets flipped a bit. We pay down the home loan, we offset the home loan, but the interest-only investment loan, we set as interest only for as long as we can. And that means that loan doesn't get paid off. We maximize the tax deduction on those interest expense tax deductions to maximize the tax benefits we get out of that. Certainly once we pay off the home loan, if that circumstance exists, then we might tinker with looking at principal and interest repayments for home loans. So the whole finance structuring, and certainly for clients that might be looking at multiple investment properties, that becomes really important, because how we structure loans, and we talk about things about like loan terms. Do we extend loan terms? Because the longer the loan term, the more a lender will lend, the more property a person can buy. We have so many clients here in Australia where there's such a love of property, and it's been a successful investment class for so long, is that people do, once they've bought the first one, it's a little bit like a drug, I guess you would say. It's addictive because people have a lot of wins out of property. The property value goes up, people's wealth goes up, and so they want to do it again. So we need to structure people's finance so that they can have that flexibility to keep going and manage their cash flow throughout that process.
All right, Dave. So that's great. Tip number 3: loan structure is really, really important. So if I can just summarise those 3 things at the moment. So get the pre-approval in place, all right, and make sure you've got that capacity right, that we're happy with lenders and everything, and also take into consideration any personal needs that will be coming up in the future, just to make sure that whatever we do, it's a good long-term plan. Next thing you brought up was professionals. So making sure that you really have a good think about whether you're the right person to pick this property, or whether you want to get alongside a property professional, either referred by us or your broker or somebody that you know. Make sure you're dealing with somebody you trust, because the industry has come from a bit of a call it a dark space, if I'm allowed to say that. Yep. And then the third thing was that, and possibly when we get a little bit closer to when you find the right property, is really digging into that loan structure, thinking about interest only versus principal and interest, what the goal is with the loans, and also preparing yourself. What I'm hearing, Dave, is preparing yourself for that, possibly that second or third property down the track, with almost this assumption that with good planning, it's a successful project and you move on to the next one with a reasonable time frame.
Yeah, it's all about managing cash flow at that point. Yes, keep going. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So are there any other tips or anything else you'd like to bring up for the clients today?
No, I think in terms of setting off on the journey of your first investment property, that's pretty much a wrap without overcomplicating things. I think they're 3 pretty strong principles that you just summed there, and I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah, okay. So if I can just add one little thing here where I find a little bit more from a financial planning point of view, is that I do find that, especially when it's your first time property, that people can have all these questions like, what am I doing? Am I buying a townhouse? Am I buying a block of land and building? Am I buying something established? Do I want to have a granny flat on the back? There's all of these questions that come up, and taking your point before, Dave, that a good property professional will be able to help those questions. But to me, I find giving people a little bit of knowledge and at least explaining to them what the different types of property might fit into is helpful, because it enables them to then go in when they're talking to that buyer's agent or that investment property professional to sort of I guess be able to ask the right questions or be able to dig into that conversation a little bit more. Would you agree that can be helpful at times?
I would, and like anything, when there's a big decision, right, it doesn't need to be rushed, so people might feel as though they have to do something quickly, but it's not something that needs to be rushed. It can be done quite methodically, and a little bit of extra time spent can be huge.
Oh, look, and I agree totally. It's funny, when people talk to me about buying a property and they say, oh, we'll start looking on Domain. And one of the things as a financial planner I'll do is I'll say, look, can I just ask you a question? If you ask me to invest, $700,000 or $800,000 of your money tomorrow in the stock market, and I just said, look, I'm just going to jump onto, the ASX and just pick a few stocks, most people would just almost walk out the door, So, but we do have this propensity to think that we can be an expert in this field, and when we're spending the same amount of money, we're spending that. Well, today, half decent property, it's very hard to find for under 750,000 in most parts of Australia. So it is an interesting almost thought process that we go through when it comes to property, and making sure that we actually do put some science and some thought behind this. So anyway, Dave, thank you for your time today. Really appreciate going through those things with me, and have a great day. And listeners, hope you got a lot out of that. Just please feel free to look in the show notes or the comments below. Our details, our website address and phone number will be there. Would love to help you if you're going on this journey of finding your first investment property.